I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, January the 25th, brought to you in part by Witex Corporation. Ear tags for all classes of livestock, plus many other products for excellence in animal health. For more information, go to y-tex.com. Very predictable. Monday was exactly like I said it would be, or I described in our last visit. The board would open up down really hard and then come back quite a bit. We didn't really know where it would settle, but it settled down, from $1.50 to $2 on most of your nearby contracts, both fats and feeders. But your lows for the day were at least a couple of dollars lower than that, and they've got those daily limits so huge now that the thing could have really been a runaway, but it come back. I wouldn't be surprised to see it gain a lot of that back here on Tuesday. Not sure if it'll do it that quick, but it will gain it back at some point here. But we had that cattle on feed report on Friday that was very bearish as to your placement figure, which is always the one that draws so much attention. We had kind of a wide range of guesses on it, and it came in around 5 percentage points higher than what your average or your analyst guess was. But then if you looked at the report, you saw it was all the gains were on cattle weighing under 700 pounds. Well, those cattle are usually out on wheat this time of year in the Southern Plains anyway, or being out eating some stockpile grass and just kind of dry wintered or something like that. It is so dry. I've always said that the wintertime is a good time to have a drought, but it is terrible. It was bad all fall and all through your plains states. Now out west, they've got all kinds of moisture out in California and up and down the west coast there, and even coming back towards your mountain ranges there on the west side of the United States. But if you get in the plains region, all the way from the Canadian border to Mexico, it is terrible dry. There's nothing for cattle to eat. And you think, cattle on feed, where the hell else would they be? You can't let them starve to death. And feed's gotten so high now, if you're going to feed them, there's no need to feed them out on your grass or somewhere. Just go ahead and sell them or send them to the feedlot and put them on full feed. Don't waste it there. You can't really just cripple them along and think that things are going to get better, because it is so dry. And also our wheat prices are so high now, settling at $8.18 a bushel on Monday. There's not going to be any graze out wheat. There are some guys that just plant a variety that you don't harvest there, and there'll be some of that, but it's all gone. There's nothing there. So where else were you going to put those cattle? Now, if some of your traders and some of your brokers will go in and look into that report and see what it said, other than the fact that it was bearish, we could likely gain that back, those losses back, a lot of it, here on Tuesday, and I sure hope we do. Your cash feeder cattle markets were, of course, lower. They weren't a complete wreck, but they were lower, and I don't know that it didn't need to be a little bit lower anyway. But because of our fat cattle trade has lost its pizzazz, we can't seem to gain much ground. We did last week gain a little bit of ground, but they kind of tried to hide it. Nebraska, they wouldn't even buy any cattle hardly on a live basis there, because the live value was higher, so they traded all of them dressed. You think these packers don't have more ploys to keep from having to pay anything for these cattle? If they're having to give more, or they have bigger needs in one area and they have more supply in another area, they'll more than gladly go down and pay a lot more for freight than it would cost them to raise the market to buy local cattle. They do that all the time, hauling cattle all over the country to keep from raising the market price on cattle. But we're getting pretty close here to the nut cutting on this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. That's the compromise bill. They've kind of taken words and put them together there, but that's the 5014 bill of Chuck Grassley and then Deb Fisher's act of much the same name as what it come out to be. But you know, we've seen just about every group get snowed into kind of brisking up at the minimum requirements of cash trade. That is everything that this bill is. That's why we need the bill, is to establish some type of minimum requirement of trade. And it's so low that it's not going to upset the apple cart or anything. It's just going to guarantee, and mostly in the Southern Plains, mostly in Kansas and Texas, it's just going to guarantee that those packers do have to purchase a very small percentage of their cattle in a negotiated manner. So the few feedlots that are still left in the Southern Plains that sell cattle cash, they don't have to take whatever they offer them early in the week. They can sit back and say, well, you know, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the week goes out, or we'll see if I get any other bids. You know, like they're going to get multiple bids from different packers. You know, that's a dreamland to get something like that. But you know, it does assure them that the packers are going to have to buy some level of cash cattle, and so they can sit back and let normal negotiations take place. We've seen, you know, all of your players that kind of are driven by you know, NCBA, TCFA, KLA. They've all come out and said that you know, they don't think this is a good idea, or we better be careful what we wish for here. It's not a good deal. Even Dr. Kuntz has kind of give up a lot of his prestige running around and talking about this deal. You know, he was supposed to kind of stay fairly neutral and be an academia person, but he's come out just completely and you know, a follower and a driver for you know, not having any kind of a minimum requirement at all, and has taken that study that he did and basically just twisted it into whatever they want it to say. So, you know, where does he get his funding for his research projects? Wonder where. Your checkoff dollars managed by who? The people that don't want this. University of Arkansas has come out and said they don't want to. Well, you drive up and down the University of Arkansas and all you see is Tyson. You think you're at a Tyson facility there. So that, you know, they know where their bread got buttered too. We saw something similar go on with Texas A&M. It's just that, and Drovers is there to report any story that anybody wants to say against the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. Anytime somebody wants to cuss it, there's somebody there with pen to paper writing it down and giving it all the prestige. Why don't you go out? Drover's always been a good publication. Why don't you go out and find somebody that's been struggling to maintain ownership of cattle, trying to feed cattle, sells cash cattle every week. He's wanting to save this industry. Go out and find somebody like that and see what he has to say about it, or she, or whoever. They're struggling to maintain the equity that they've had in their operation for generations, and the packers are just about to bleed them completely dry of it. Find somebody like that, would you? That says, man, if they just had some level that they had to participate in negotiation, that would take the load off of me, where I wouldn't have to just be a market taker. I could be a market maker once in a while. And then now, especially Dr. Kuntz has come in and said, oh, there's going to be all this expense involved with having to have more negotiated trade. Huh? Where's all this expense coming from? If you do it in the Southern Plains, which is basically what we're talking about now, Nebraska and Iowa have been the drivers of this thing, but we're getting all the ruffling up, and we're getting all the backlash from the Southern Plains, because, you know, the Southern Plains has been pretty much completely dominated and you know, by the big four packers, and there's just not enough players in there. So you know, that's where all the backlash is coming from. I don't think they would really care if we had a 50% minimum in Iowa. They trade about that every week anyway. I don't think they would care if you set Nebraska somewhere in the low 30s or mid 30s, because they do it. But they just don't want to set Texas anywhere near 10%, or Kansas anywhere around 20. They just absolutely don't want to see that happen. And they're saying, oh, it's got all this expense. Well, in the Southern Plains, to sell the cattle live, those cattle are picked up or sold FOB. Where's the expense in that? It seems to me like these AMAs, these alternative marketing agreements, have a hell of a lot more expense in them. You got to bring them to their door, drop them off with a bow tied around them and a thank you note and some chocolate kisses there, in hopes that they'll do you right when they send them to the plant. The biggest problem with this whole situation is slaughter is an ugly business. Nobody wants to watch it or be involved in it. Nobody's keeping track of what's going on in these packing plants, and the packers love it that way. Do you think if they had a window there, you know, along the kill floor and the hot scales, that people would want to peek in there and look at it? No. Nobody wants anything to do with it, and that's the way the packers love it. Nobody's checking up on them. Nobody's keeping track. They can screw you at the hot scales for years before anybody picks it up, figures it out, and that's just kind of the way that they like it. They like the fact that people don't want to be involved in the ugly part of slaughter, and that's the way it's always been. But it seems like I get off on these tangents, but for people that don't tune into this very often, I want them to get a little of it every single day. We've got the NCBA meeting coming up here next week in Houston. They're going to have to make a decision, because they've come out with policy that said if there's 75% of a robust market deal didn't work, which it didn't, hit all the triggers, didn't take very long for it to happen either. So now if according to policy, they have to support some means of regulatory or legislative action that will encourage packers to participate more in negotiated trade. Here's a nice bill right here. Why can't we just go ahead and get behind that deal and get it pushed through and do it? That's what we need to do, guys. But it's just, do I think they will? No. I think they'll completely go back against what they said they were going to do. I think they'll continue to support some kind of a voluntary deal. We've already seen what happens when you ask the packers nicely to participate more. They don't want to participate in negotiated trade. If it didn't cause prices to be higher, they would be fine with it. And everybody keeps trying to do all these studies to see whether, yeah, if they don't want it, chances are we do. Let's look at the board for Monday. February live cattle down $1.60 because of the cattle and feed report, ending the day at 136.32. April down 202, just clinging to 140 now at 140.07. Your back months were down a quarter to down $1.72, and a lot of their further outs were not down that much. So you know, I think this thing could come back here pretty quick. January feeder cattle down $1.80 at 158.47. March down 205 at 161.25. Back months, your feeder cattle are all down pretty big, from 92 cents to 175 lower. And grains, corn was up 4 3/4 cents at 621. It may not dip down back in there to the fives until we get closer to next year's crop, or this year's crop, I guess I should say. Beans down 11 1/4 cents at 1403. No rhyme or reason to your grains there. And Kansas City still just spastic, up 24 3/4 cents, closing at 8.18 a bushel. Weighted average on last week's negotiated fat cattle trade in your 5-area feeding region, only 59,500 head. Not too much compared to the same week a year ago, which was 76,600 head. That's not enough either. Your live sales of steers and heifers were from 135.5 to 140.5. Pretty much $1 to $1.50 higher. Why? Because the Southern Plains was able to get 137 for their bulk rather than 136, what they got the previous week. The weighted average on live steers in the 5-area feeding region is right at 137.50, and that was 89 cents higher than the previous week. But then dress sales absolutely steady, 217 to lion's share 218. Weighted average on dress steers 217.92. That was only off 7 cents a hundred. So that's just kind of peculiar the way that worked. Nationwide, 74,100 head of negotiated sales. Negotiated grid sales were 36,400 head. Your formula sales were 271,300 head. Of your negotiated sales, 74,100, about 28%, which is kind of typical, or 21,000 were for the 15 to 30 day delivery. So they're able to get some more of those and kind of set the market up for a fall here. But box beef cutout values were higher again. Choice cuts up $1.09 at $293.50. Probably going to break $300 here on choice cuts. Selects up $246 at $284.79 on Monday afternoon. Talk about what else is going on. My friends at Beaver County Stockyards got a good Tuesday sale there going on. And every week, week in, week out, you don't have to wait for a special sale or anything like that. They have a good market there on all classes each and every Tuesday. Get a hold of them there at Beaver County Stockyards, which is in Oklahoma. It's on the eastern end of the Oklahoma Panhandle there. And it's a good place to market your cattle. Talk about your feeder cattle market for the first day of the week, Monday here, with that bad cattle on feed report sinking our board. Real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Monday said at 158.51, down $1.13. Just one day's sales there after that disappointing cattle on feed report, and people misjudging that caused your index levels to go down more than $1. But your sales were down quite a bit. Like I said, it wasn't a wreck, but it was sure lower. Oklahoma National Stockyards, Oklahoma City, 13,000 cattle. They underestimated there. They were only looking for 11,000 or a little more. Feeders, $3 to $5 lower. Calves are $3 to $5 lower. And you think, well, maybe that does it. You don't think they really look at the dollars lower. I tell you what, your number one 8-weight steers in Oklahoma City, the number one 8-weight steers, which there was only around 600 head of them, they averaged 148.21. That was the average on them, guys. That's $10 under what your real-time index is. It's a 7-day moving average here on Monday, but that's a ton underneath what your CME cash feeder cattle index is, which is just under 160, the latest available. But it'll be sinking down here pretty quick. Just wait. Joplin Regional Stockyards, 10,000 head there. They called most classes steady. They looked $2 to $3 lower to me on your automated market report with Cattle Market Central, but that's not terrible. I will agree that the Pee-wee steers there, especially the 4 weights, were $10 to $12 higher there. But a better market there in Joplin. Joplin does not hinge quite as much on your board as Oklahoma National Stockyards. No sale barn in the country hinges on your board as much as Oklahoma National Stockyards, because it's totally dominated by your big corporate feeders that hedge everything up to their eyeballs. Let's talk about Russell Livestock, Russell, Iowa, 3,500 head there. The feeding type calves big enough to go right into the feedlot, and what yearlings they had on hand there, but not really true yearlings. They were $1 to $5 lower. Some of your lighter calves were more lower than that, $3 to $10 lower. Those guys up there, farmer feeders, they weren't too apt to get into things till they kind of see what goes on here with the board being down so much on Monday. Couple of stick out sales on Monday. Sioux Falls Regional Livestock in Worthing, South Dakota had the only quote that I saw of 8-weight steers that brought over 160. That's how tough it was. They had 140 head, 820-pound feeder steers there in Worthing, South Dakota, bring 162.35. That's the best quote that I saw anywhere on Monday. It's your National Beef Wire top quote for the day. It comes out of Aberdeen, South Dakota. Aberdeen livestock sales, they sold 54 head of 951 pound feeder steers at 159 1/4. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.